Just when we thought that we'd seen everything that 2021 had to offer in terms of new sim racing products, along comes another new sim racing brand, MOZA Sim Racing. Now, MOZA does sound a lot like Monza, and I'm sure a lot of you are thinking it's probably not the most creative name for a sim racing brand out there, but MOZA as a wider brand has actually been around for a number of years now. It's a Chinese brand, and they've specialized in things like camera gimbals. They also released or announced an active suspension system for real life cars at the Shanghai Motor Show this year. So Chinese brand, have been around for a couple of years now, but this is a brand new venture for them. And they do tell me that the group of engineers behind MOZA Sim Racing specifically are actually a group of automotive engineers that used to work for BOSCH Motorsports, who of course are involved in all sorts of motorsports manufacturing. So from ECUs, dashes, all sorts of sensors, bits and pieces like that. You name it, pretty much BOSCH makes it for motorsports. So that information, along of course with the relatively high price point, does mean that I do have high expectations for this brand. Talking about pricing just briefly now, we'll talk about this more obviously when we do our proper review video later on down the track, but pricing is around about the same as the equivalent Fanatic hardware. So the 16 Newton meter wheelbase is about the same price as a DD1. The 21 Newton meter is about the same price as a DD2, a little bit cheaper than a DD2. Wheels, pedals, all around the same price as their Fanatic counterparts. So in the back of my mind, that's the level of quality that I'm expecting from what we're looking at today. Now, because this is a new brand and there's not a whole lot of information out there just yet, we really do want to take our time and make sure that we're going into as much detail as we possibly can to really, I guess, set the expectations correctly in terms of what the experience is going to be like to own and drive with these products. So the focus of today's video is purely just going to be unboxing, showing you exactly what you get, showing you what the hands-on experience is like. I guess just give you our first impressions on things like the build quality, presentation, and things like that. So you'll definitely see a more detailed review a little bit further down the track. So enough rambling, let's get in and see what MOZA Sim Racing is all about. So let's start at the very beginning here. Right from the get-go, communication with MOZA Sim Racing has been very clear and concise. They originally sent me an email, asked me if I'd be interested in reviewing the gear. They obviously sent it across to us as well to check out, so thank you very much for doing that. They also got in touch with me on WhatsApp as well to give me a little bit more information, send me some links, some videos and bits and pieces like that. Very clear communication, very polite to deal with. Absolutely no concerns or any issues whatsoever to speak of there. They didn't make any funny demands. They didn't try to put words in our mouth, anything like that. They purely just asked if we'd be interested in receiving the gear to give our honest opinion on. So big thumbs up there. What I think is also worth calling out straight away is the fact that they are hitting the market with a complete ecosystem right from the get-go. And obviously the fact that they have priced these products similar to the Fanatic counterparts, you know, that's an important part of their strategy, because obviously if they're only hitting the market with a couple of things, it's going to be a tough sell to buy something like this over something like Fanatic, where you have a choice of an abundance of different hardware, even though it can be quite hard to get your hands on that hardware at the moment with the shipping delays due to global shortages and things like that. But I do really appreciate the fact that they're hitting the market with a complete ecosystem here. You can buy the pedals, you can buy the 16 or the 21 Newton meter wheelbase. We have the 16 version here. You can buy a range of different wheels. You've also got a mounting bracket for aluminium profile and also the little dash as well. So you have everything you need right from the get-go to get up and racing, which I think is a really smart strategy. But anyway, let's get into it. We'll start off by having a look at the wheel. That is going to be the thing that's going to be in your hands and in your face most often. So that's probably the most important in terms of presentation. Then we'll have a look at the base, we'll have a look at the dash, the pedals, and of course the mounting bracket too. So this is the RS steering wheel, Dream Racing at your fingertips. And if we flip the box around here, we can see there are 4 different variations available. I believe what we have here is the Alcantara D-shape. So we've got Napa leather or Alcantara. We've also got round or D-shape variants. Now, what I would recommend there, just think carefully about exactly the kind of driving that you're going to be doing. For me personally, leather or Alcantara is just a subjective choice. Some wheels I prefer Alcantara, some I prefer leather. Just depends on the style of driving that I'm doing. With regards to D-shape or round, again, if you're doing more rally style, drifting, things like that, round is definitely the more versatile choice. D-shape, you just can't slip through your hands like you can with a round wheel for drifting or anything where you need to be able to slide the wheel through your hands. So just be aware of that when you're making your choice. But let's open up the box now. Not really much else to cover here. There's a couple of product features written on the side, but we'll talk about all that when we get inside. So let's pop the top open. Okay, this way around. And yeah, I feel nervous anticipation with this because, like I said, I do have high expectations here because of the price, but yeah, I mean, it does look pretty darn good. So I don't want to be disappointed. I want this to be really good. So let's have a look here. Yeah, this just pops off. There's nothing else in the box. So lid comes off. Okay, we've got a nice little bag here as well, just like what we get with Fanatic. Nice little insert there too, so very well packaged. And I've got to say, everything was very well packaged as it came to us. It all came in a big padded cardboard box that all the retail packaging was inside. So yeah, no shipping damage whatsoever. Everything was fine there. All right, you ready with the camera, Tom?
Yeah.
We're going to get one shot at this. once I've seen it, I can't unsee it. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Whew. There we go. Hey, that's really nice. That's really nice, actually. I've got to, yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't really know what to, that Alcantara is really soft. Very nice. I mean, we'll see when we go for a drive in a future video whether the Alcantara rubs off on our hands like what we had with some of the Sim Magic wheels that we tested out. So, but yeah, that actually looks really nice. You can see the forged carbon fiber in there as well, which I believe is genuine forged carbon fiber. That carries across to the paddles as well. So exactly the same material as you would have seen on the Fanatec F1 2020 limited edition wheel, which, you know, it's a subjective thing. Some people love it, some people hate it, but I personally think it looks pretty darn cool. Rotary encoders feel nice. Decent detents there. A nice positive kind of click for each movement. Push button as well. There is a little bit of a vibration through the cage, so that's one thing. It may only be this wheel, I don't know. When I tap on it, I can hear a bit of a vibration through, which is probably actually the horn button. That's interesting, it actually does have a horn. So there you go, you can beep your horn for realsies. So these two little switches here, these are analog hat switches. So they do have a push button function, so we can push them in, and then we've got an analog move around there. So it's interesting they've gone with an analog hat switch for what they're calling the menu button there. Obviously for a glance, for looking around, you want to have analog, but yeah, a little bit interesting that they haven't gone with a 7-way funky switch. I'm sure there's a reason for that, but yeah, just so you guys know. The buttons themselves have a really nice click to them actually. That's actually feels quite similar to the Sim Magic wheels that we tested not long ago, which I actually really love the buttons that they use on those wheels. So happy about that. We've got our RGB programmable RPM LED strip up the top here as well. Obviously we'll have a look at that in detail when we go for a drive in a future video too. And then flip it around, have a look at the shifters quickly too. I should mention as well, 320mm diameter here. So we do have the round one, not the D shape. I thought it might be the D shape. I'm happy about that because I do prefer a round wheel to a D shape for the versatility reasons that I spoke about before. So having a look at the shifters, one thing I am actually noticing immediately is I think, if I'm not mistaken, these are the exact same shifter cages as we had with the Sim Magic wheels that we reviewed. So yeah, I mean, don't quote me on that. I'm not 100%, and unfortunately I don't have any Sim Magic gear here at the moment that I can directly compare to. But yeah, just at face value, if they aren't the same, they're very, very similar. Nice positive click to them. Obviously you can see the little neodymium magnets in the back there. But I mean, yeah, at a glance, and obviously driving experience aside, for a 650 Australian dollar wheel, I think the quality is about what I would expect. I do notice one little defect in the gluing there on the Alcantara, but I mean, obviously, again, that is just, you know, that's this particular wheel. I'm sure they're not all going to be like that. You can see a little bit of glue seepage there, just in the corner. I mean, those are the kinds of little details that you don't get with, you know, some of the more expensive wheels out there, but you know, I've definitely seen wheels around this same price point, which are, you know, the same, if not slightly worse quality than what this is in terms of the presentation. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty impressed at face value. So in terms of construction as well, as I mentioned before, we've got the forged carbon fiber faceplate here, as well as forged carbon fiber paddles. And if we have a look in the side here as well, we can see the multiple layers of carbon fiber. So it does look like it's genuine carbon fiber all the way through. Probably what they've done is taken normal carbon fiber composite and then just put a layer of forged over the top at the end. But again, I can't verify that without sanding through or polishing it down or anything like that. That's what Fanatec do with theirs. So yeah, it does appear to be genuine carbon fiber all the way through. And yeah, we've got the analog paddles here as well with dual clutch functionality. It says on the side of the box here, dual clutch photoelectric magnetic paddles. So we'll obviously explore exactly what that means when we do our final review too. But yeah, a nice positive click on those shifters. There is a little bit of a sort of resonance or vibration that comes through the wheel when you do click. But again, when we have this bolted to the wheelbase, probably won't feel that. And we'll talk about that again when we go for a drive. Now, one thing that I did notice here, which is really quite strange, is if you have a look at the shifter on the right-hand side, or your upshift, it's got an open bottom here, which immediately gives it a whole bunch of flex there. So that is kind of silly. And yeah, I mean, I can see that breaking. I mean, it is 5mm thick carbon fiber, so it's, you know, relatively sturdy, but I can see that breaking off around here because all of that tension is all going through here. But if you go over to the downshift, it's closed and there's barely any flex there at all. So yeah, I have no idea why they would do that, but I mean, it's obviously done intentionally because you can see the beveled edge here where they've kind of, you know, softened it off and everything. So yeah, I don't think it doesn't appear to me like it's a manufacturing defect. It appears to me like it's intentional, but yeah, I just don't know why. But yeah, if I had to make one suggestion just at face value before we go for a drive, it would be to make this paddle the same as that paddle, because that makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever, and it just introduces a whole bunch of flex that doesn't need to be there. But anyway, so let's talk about the quick release now. So very happy to see this style of quick release used. This is the D1 style quick release, which is also utilized on real life race cars as well, minus the power pins internally. So this is very similar, if not identical, to the quick release that we see on Sim Magic wheels. You can see the little 5 pins inside here, which are responsible for delivering power to the wheel. Now, I'm not sure in the case of MOZA Sim Racing, whether they're using those pins for data connection as well. In the case of Sim Magic wheels, they use a little Bluetooth transceiver inside the wheel and on the wheelbase to handle data, and only power is handled through the pins. But again, we'll explore that later on. But very happy to see this quick release used. The D1 style quick releases have already proven themselves in the real world, obviously in race cars. And so far this quick release system, or at least the Sim Magic implementation of it, has proven itself to be very robust as well. You'll remember, it must be almost 2 years ago now, we reviewed the Sim Magic M10, and I was a big fan of this quick release system. The only concern I had was potential wear and tear on these pins over time. Now, I've been keeping a very close eye on Sim Magic forums, Discord, and so forth in those 2 years since then, just to sort of see how it stood the test of time, because we don't actually have one here that we use long term. And yeah, I'm happy to say I haven't seen any problems reported at all with failure of the pins or anything like that when it comes to the quick release on Sim Magic. So I can only assume at this point that it'll be the same. So just to quickly demonstrate how the quick release works, at the moment we're in the release position, so the collar is pulled towards us. Obviously, as we were removing the wheel, we'd pull on the collar and then pop the wheel off the wheelbase. So what happens is when we push this onto the wheelbase, this little internal metal ring here gets pushed down. So I'll just push it down with my fingers here. It is quite a violent action, so I wouldn't recommend doing this at home. You may pinch yourself, but I've done it a few times before. I know where to position my hands. So we're just gonna push that down like so. And you can see when we did that, the whole collar is spring-loaded. It pops forward. You'll notice inside here, we've got these little ball bearings which are spring-loaded. So they pop into position and they grab onto little indentations on the metal shaft on the base side. So that's what keeps it in place and that's what stops it from flexing. And yeah, at least in terms of our experience with the Sim Magic, there was absolutely no flex whatsoever in the quick release, which we're really happy about. And that is definitely one advantage that I see over the Fanatec QR1 system at least. We haven't had our hands on the QR2 system yet, so we can't comment on that just yet. I'm definitely expecting that that is going to remove any flex in the quick release system for Fanatec's ecosystem. But yeah, this seems to be every bit as solid and pretty much exactly the same design, if not identical in terms of design to the Sim Magic system. So to take the wheel back off the wheelbase, all we would do is pull that collar towards us, like so. You can see that metal ring snaps back into position. All the ball bearings are now retracted and the wheel will simply just slide straight off the wheelbase like so. So that is a quick look at the wheel, and yeah, I've got to say, you know, it is expensive. So I do, you know, I am treating it as such when I'm looking at it. I'm not, you know, treating it as a cheap piece of sim gear. And yeah, first impression there is that the quality is just about on par with the Sim Magic wheels. I do like the programmable RGB buttons that we have on the Sim Magic wheels, which it doesn't look like this has. This is just a solid color. We do have the RGB strip along the top, which is programmable, but we'll look at all that in detail when we go for a drive later on. I do kind of like that horn though. I think that's kind of cool, even though it does rattle a little bit. So we'll see if that bothers us when we go for a drive later on. We do have that slight vibration in the shifters and that slight little vibration inside the metal housing of our button plate as well. So yeah, overall, I got to say I'm pretty darn impressed with that though. So let's move on to the wheelbase. So next up we have the R16 Direct Drive Wheelbase, your speed and passion. Now there is a R21 version as well, those numbers referring to the peak torque. So if we compare that to the Fanatec equivalent, which are around the same price point, the DD1 is 20 Newton meters peak and 15 Newton meters holding, whereas this is 16 Newton meters peak, and they don't actually quote the holding torque here. The 21 Newton meter version is 21 Newton meters peak torque, so we assume around sort of 16 16, 17 Newton meters holding torque, but again, that's not quoted. Whereas the DD2, which is a little bit more expensive than the R21 version, is 25 Newton meters peak and 20 Newton meters holding. So the DD1, DD2 are slightly stronger than this, but having said that, I think that this is going to be more than enough torque for the majority of people. And I've said many times before throughout all the wheelbase reviews that we've done on this channel that I feel like around the sort of 10 to 12, maybe 14 Newton meter mark is kind of really the sweet spot, or where the real value for money is. So I think that 16 Newton meters of peak torque is going to be just about right. Now, if we spin the box around as well, you can see there are two different cosmetic designs too. So we've got the gold shroud here, as well as a black shroud with some pinstriping. And if we flip the box around the other way as well, just a couple of call out features here. So 16 Newton meter peak torque, as we mentioned before, hypercar concept, which is just referring to the visual design. 262,144 resolution encoder. So what that means is that we have 262,144 measurement points throughout the full rotation of the wheel, or in other words, a 16-bit resolution. Patented wireless power supply. Now I assume that is referring to, again, those pins that we saw before. Now it's interesting that they say that that's patented, because it is the exact same system, at least as far as I can tell, as what we see on the Sim Magic wheels. So whether it's their patent and they're just paying for access, or maybe these come out of the same factory, I don't know, but it doesn't look like it's any different fundamentally from what we have on the Sim Magic anyway. But it isn't true wireless power in terms of the fact that it's using inductive coupling, at least between the wheel and the wheelbase. But what we probably have internally, remembering that a direct drive wheel can spin infinitely, we probably have some sort of an inductive coupling system like what we had in the DD1, DD2 and the CSL DD to get the power from the housing through to the shaft of the motor. And if you want to understand more about how that works, have a look at our DD2 teardown, where we actually looked at that in detail and exactly how that functions. So then we have MOZA Pit House Control software, which we'll obviously be looking at later on, and also App Cloud Control 2. So two more features which we're excited to check out when we get into the driving and software. But let's crack the seal on this guy, and let's see what we have inside the box. Now, one thing I will mention is it is very hefty. It's about, it's just a little bit under 10 kilograms, about 9 kilograms. Let's flip the lid open here. And again, nice solid packaging. We've got a power cable here with a emergency stop button or a power switch, pretty much exactly the same as what we had again with the Sim Magic M10 and Alpha that we reviewed. Now, interestingly, this does have what I'm going to describe as a dust shield over here, simply because I don't want to open up the can of worms that I would do by calling it a weather shield. Definitely wouldn't recommend that you operate this thing outdoors in rain, but yeah, little shroud over the power switch there. We've got a little Allen key screwdriver tool in there as well. And then we've popped the cover off. And we have a giant power brick that actually looks like it's exactly the same power brick as we get with the DD1 and DD2, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, different branding here, but let me actually, I'm just going to grab my DD2 power supply, because I think that is exactly the same. Just give me a second. So yeah, here we go. Here's my DD2 power supply. And as you can see, they look absolutely identical to each other. But if you flip them over and have a look at the labels here, one of them, so the DD2 power supply is, it is a switch mode power supply, 100 to 240 volts. Same deal here as well. So this will work anywhere in the world that you plug it in, as long as you've got the correct IEC cable. So you don't need to use an inverter or anything like that. Now, in the case of the MOZA, we've got 36 volts, 10 amps output, or 360 watts. With the DD2 power supply, we've got 36 volts and 13.33 amps, or 479.88 watts. So the Fanatec power supply is slightly higher rated than the MOZA power supply. Don't have the DD1 power supply here. Tom has that at his place, so I'm going to get him to check that when he gets home, and he'll pop an overlay on the text to let you know whether that one is identical to the DD2 or whether it's the same as this one. But yeah, in terms of physical design, exactly the same as we have with Fanatec, which is interesting, but it's not really surprising. Now, one other thing I'm sure you're wondering about as well is the power connection. That is our DD2 power connection, and that is our MOZA Sim Racing power connection. So both just using a Molex style power connector, and exactly the same pin configuration there. So yeah, that doesn't mean that the pinouts are the same. If I look at the pinouts on there quickly as well, Pin 1, 2, and 3 are positive. Pin 4 and 5 are V negative, and pin 6 is not connected, whereas pin 6 on the MOZA is V negative as well. So yeah, slightly different pin configuration between the two. I wouldn't recommend using different power supplies on different bases anyway, but just for those who might be wondering. What else do we have in here? We've also got a USB A to B style connector as well, with a little ferrite choke on there too, just for EMI. Let's get the base out. So, oh, that is hefty. Okay, I'll pop it down on the desk and then I'll get the box out of the way and then we'll have a look. All right, you ready, Tom?
Yeah, mate.
Okay, let's do it. I still get excited by doing this. Okay. Oh, wow, that's really actually quite nice. The photos don't do it justice because like that's actually like a automotive Duco kind of paint that's on there. That's really cool. Almost looks like a McLaren or a Pagani or something like that, but it's got this kind of metallic fleck to it. That's really cool. Because I thought it might just be kind of like a Logitech style kind of plasticky, cheap looking thing, but no, it's all metal. I mean, it's just, you know, thin aluminium on the sides there, but I mean, this part where the motor housing is really solid. So if we flip around the back here, you can see our cooling vents. Now, the little pieces here as well do have openings which go inside. So it looks almost like it should be an active system. It looks like it should have a fan inside that's pulling air through, but I don't see when I look inside the back here any cooling fan. No, I don't think so. I mean, when we do the full review, we will open this up and have a look inside and show you exactly how it all works, but it does look like it's passively cooled, at least in face value. So plenty of ventilation there. But honestly, every direct drive wheelbase that we've tested here on the channel, whether it's actively or passively cooled, we've never had any problems with temperature overrun, anything like that. Everything that we've tested has only ever gotten lukewarm, and I don't see any reason why we would have any problems with this either. Just the amount of heft that we have here in the motor assembly, you know, just in the volume of metal alone and the heat sinking capacity of that would be enough to passively cool this perfectly fine, I would imagine. So yeah, no concerns around temperature just looking at it, but again, we'll talk about it when we do the full review. In terms of inputs and outputs, we've got a power button here. We've got our DC input for our power jack, USB connection, and an emergency stop connection. So there is an emergency stop accessory that's available. Unfortunately, they didn't send that to us, so we can't show it to you, but it does look quite nice. I'll get Tom to flash an image up on the screen for you guys. No data port connection, no CAN bus or anything like that, but you know, we've never actually seen an accessory available for any of the wheelbases that do have those ports that actually utilizes them. So yeah, I don't see that really as being anything missing, but just something to be aware of. Now, if we have a look at the motor shaft on this side, you can see very similar looking to our DD1 and DD2, same golden finish on the shaft here. The locking ring, as it looks like on here, is non-functional though. So as we saw before, the quick release clamps on directly. There's no tensioning mechanism, nothing that needs to be rotated or tightened, unlike the DD1 and the DD2. And I do much prefer that. I do, as you know, think that the DD1 and the DD2, that is definitely a weak point, and something that I'm hoping that the QR2 will address in terms of flex. So that is a good thing. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering about the feeling of the motor shaft as well. It does feel quite smooth with the motor non-energized. Very little cogging or torque ripple there at all, but that is not an accurate way of talking about it. The motor does need to be energized, the firmware needs to be active, and the drivers even need to be running to really get a good feel for how the motor is going to feel when you're up and driving. One of the things with direct drive motors is there is a feedback loop there. Without that electronic feedback loop running, we really can't comment too much on how the motor feels. But as a base point for comparison, it does feel quite nice and smooth, and I wouldn't expect it's going to feel any worse than this when we're up and running. If anything, it should be better, but yeah, no concerns around smoothness here, but we'll comment on it when we go for a drive later on. And yeah, I mean, there's not really a whole lot more to talk about other than just mounting until we go for a drive. So let's flip it up on its side, just being careful not to scratch that paint. We can see a little clamp area here for mounting to our bracket, which we'll look at in just a moment. And then we also have 4 mounting holes here too. And we'll take you through all the spacing and everything of that when we do our full review. They look like M6 threads on there. So we do have the option to mount this directly to a base plate should we wish to do so. We're probably going to have to drill holes because it's not going to match any existing hardware like your Fanatec bases or Thrustmaster or anything like that. But let's have a quick look at the mounting bracket now as well. This allows us to mount, as we can see, directly to a piece of 4080 profile. And yeah, let's have a look at it. So we'll pop it out quickly. And okay, that's really nicely presented as well. I mean, as far as mounting brackets go, we get a little Allen key in there, We get some M6 bolts, and they actually have some thread locker on them as well, which is nice. So again, all the, you know, all the little areas where attention to detail is important, they kind of seem to have it covered. So you can see a nice mounting bracket. So these obviously line up with our mounting holes on the bottom. And we've got little rubber pads there as well, which is quite nice. That's going to eliminate any nasty metal to metal vibration that might be transferred through. Obviously, when you've got it clamped down and bolted up tight, that shouldn't be a problem anyway. But again, just attention to detail everywhere. And if we have a look in the side here as well, we've got a little bit of angle adjustment available here too. Looks like maybe 10 degrees, but again, we'll cover that when we do our full review. So what's essentially going to happen is you're going to mount these to your channels on your profile, just like what we have in the picture here. And then this bolts onto the base and you're good to go. And that's nice and thick as well, 5mm thick aluminium. It looks to be anodized rather than powder coated as well. And yeah, really nice finish. We'll again talk about flex and all those things when we go for a drive, but yeah, nothing to complain about at face value at all. I mean, the quality seems really, really good. So, I mean, as you would expect for the price once again, but yeah, it's good. Now, one thing that we'll notice on the top of the wheelbase is if we have a look just in here, there's 4 little tiny contact pins, and you'll also notice on the side, 2 little mounting holes, and there's 2 on the opposing side as well. And those are all for mounting and interfacing our RMHD racing meter. Now, I'm really interested to see what this is like. This is 549 Australian dollars as an optional accessory for the wheelbase. So very high expectations at that price. It ought to be really, really darn good for 550 bucks. So let's pop it out of the box. You can see, again, we've got some little rubber caps there, some little mounting screws with some thread locker material on them too. Set that aside. Let's have a look at the main guy. Now, there's no screen protector on there, but I'm assuming this must be something that they've sent me that's already been previously unboxed. I would imagine that on the retail version, this is a retail unit, but I think it's been previously unboxed at the factory potentially. There's no screen protector on there, but yeah, that is really nice. I mean, as it should be for the money. It's very similar build quality. You can see aluminium housing. Not sure whether it looks like it's cast rather than CNC machined, unlike the Grid Engineering DDU that we reviewed recently, which was a similar price to this. And so, you know, we're expecting similar quality here, but yeah, really nice design. You can see there the 4 pins that interface with the wheelbase, and this is just going to mount on here like so, and then screw into position from the sides. So in terms of the screen itself, it is a 5-inch screen with, let me just reference my notes here, 16.7 million colors, and the resolution is 800 by 480. So look, I mean, I think for the price, I'm still a little bit disappointed with that resolution. Obviously, we'll comment on it in real life when we get up and driving, but you know, just from my experience with other dashes, you know, for that kind of price, I would like to see high resolution. In 2021, we've had smartphones for 10 years now that have higher resolution than that with similar sized screens. So, you know, while it's not necessarily massively important in the context of sim racing, if you are doing things like displaying leaderboards where you've got lots of names that are all sort of squished into a small space, extra resolution definitely does help in that regard. So of course, we will comment on it when we're up and driving, but a little bit surprised to see only 800 by 480 resolution at that price point. Would like to see that resolution bumped up. And hopefully that's something that we will see into the future. So on now to what I think is the most important part of any sim racing ecosystem, the pedal set. So we've got these CRP Racing Pedals. If we flip the box around quickly, we can see we have adjustability with 3 different, what looks like rubber or elastomer springs for Formula, race car, and performance car. And if we flip around the other side as well, high precision load cell, aerospace or airplane grade aluminium, a 3-stage clutch, so that refers to the feeling of the clutch as you push it down, pressure, angle and travel adjustments, race car and performance car foot feeling adjustable. So, I mean, the ecosystem does look really nice, doesn't it? I mean, it just kind of works. It looks really complete, and yeah, I'm really impressed so far. Let's have a look at these pedals. All right, so we've got a foam insert here. Nothing underneath it, okay. Nothing underneath it. It was a dummy. There we go. I don't know what that's all about, but there we go. We've got the actual pedals inside here. So we've got a USB cable, USB A to B with a 90-degree angle. We've got a little box here. I'll need my knife to open that up. So bumper kit and spring kit. That's going to be for our adjustments. So nice big hefty M8 mounting screws, spring, some hardware as well for adjustments. So great that they include all the hardware that you're going to need to make adjustments. Got a couple of different elastomer springs and metal springs there. And then another spring. So I assume one of those is for the clutch, one of those is for the throttle. And then these are the adjustable springs and bits and pieces for your brake. So we'll quickly pop the pedals out of the box. I assume that the reason why we had that dummy area inside the box is that's probably for the base plate, which I guess they must have not included for us, which is a little bit disappointing because I was kind of hoping to show that to you. But yeah, there's nothing else in the box there. So we're going to have to mount those pedals directly to our rig, which is fine. We can do that. But yeah, I would have liked to have been able to show you guys the mounting plate. Now, let's just talk about it quickly while we've got the box here because we can. So it looks like what happens is the pedals mount to the plate, and then the plate has this kind of step in it, which allows you to mount onto your rig from the underside. And it looks like it's got some little captive inserts or nuts or something on the back there, which allow you to screw through. So yeah, it looks like it is a pretty complete solution in terms of mounting, but unfortunately we just can't show it to you in any more detail than that. All right, here we go. So we've got our throttle. Hey, that's really nice. I shouldn't be surprised by now, but that actually is really nice. Okay, we've got our brake. Okay. And our clutch. So we've got little connections in the side here to connect our USB. Our brake connects in as well. So they're pretty flimsy little connections, but I mean, they should be fine. It's pretty, pretty static once they're plugged in. They're not going to move around. So yeah, I wouldn't say that they're worse than the RJ12 connections that we often see on things like Heusinkveld pedals, for example, or Fanatic pedals. But yeah, just different. Then our clutch is going to connect to our clutch input here. Now, interestingly, they've spelt that incorrectly. It says cluff instead of clutch, but we know what they mean. That's fine, we'll allow it. So yeah, just a little connection there. We've got our USB connection in the side there too. And then if we flip around on this side, interestingly, we have a throttle connection. We've got a throttle motor connection and then a DC input connection as well. Now, we don't have any information on this at this point in time, but I can only assume that that's going to mean that there's going to be some sort of vibration motor or tactile feedback device, like what we have on the throttle and brake on our Fanatec V3 pedals, for example, to allow for a little bit of tactile feedback in the throttle pedal, which is interesting. I'm surprised it's not on the brake pedal, but yeah, throttle would plug into the throttle, and then obviously we have our motor and our DC input for powering those motors as well. Now, let's just run through quickly, talk about the design a little bit more. So pretty basic design here. We've got a nice anodized aluminium upright here for the pedal. No adjustability in terms of our pedal plate height on the throttle. Also not on the brake or the clutch. So you can move these ones from side to side. You can see we've got the same mounting holes here, but we can't actually move it up and down. Not that that should be a problem, I don't think. We do have adjustment of the pitch for all three though. So we can loosen or tighten this screw here, and that will tilt the pedal in and out. You can see it pivots on this top part here, and it just screws in and out off the back here. And that is the same for our brake and our clutch as well. Now, we can't really give you a good indication as to what everything feels like on the table, but you can definitely see that three-stage effect going on with the clutch pedal. You can see the first stage is pretty progressive, and then you get the big step, and then you've got a third stage, which is just a little bit of squish in the end. And if we flip it over, you can actually see we've got a spring mechanism here, a spring mechanism here, and then our spring here as well. So as we push it down, we get 1, 2, so the first one squishes up here, then the second one stretches, and then the third one squishes in as well. So it looks to be just a potentiometer on the side here. That looks to be the mechanism. So yeah, it's just a rotary potentiometer sitting in the side there. And just quickly moving over to the throttle as well, we'll have a quick look at that because it's more similar to the clutch. So again, a nice progressive feel there, and it actually does have quite a nice, almost dampened feeling. I don't think that that's a hydraulic cylinder in there. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It doesn't say in any of the literature that it's hydraulic. And again, this is something that we'll clarify with them before we do the final review. But it does have quite a nice kind of hydraulic squish to it as you push it in and out. It's not just, you know, a free spring-loaded action. So yeah, very nice feel there. And again, we'll comment on it when we go for a drive. We do have adjustability in terms of the pedal hardness as well. So up and down here, obviously the tilt, as we mentioned before. And yeah, very basic design really. Other than that, potentiometer in the side here as well for measuring our position. And then if we move over to the brake, this is a little bit more complex and quite an interesting design. So yeah, I'm a little bit confused about this because we do have a load cell in the back here, which you can see, and that connects into our control module, but we also have what looks to be a potentiometer in the front here as well. So I don't know whether maybe there's a potentiometer version and you just kind of leave this unplugged on the load cell version, or what the deal is. Maybe they do this for manufacturing, they just include the whole lot. I don't know, and again, we'll clarify that, but they are, despite the fact that they look like they have a potentiometer on the side here, they are a load cell brake, as we can see here. So that's our load cell in the bottom here. I'm not sure on the weight of the load cell. That is, again, something that's not included in the literature, but we'll clarify that for the review. But yeah, interesting the way this works. So what happens is as you push down on the pedal, you've got your spring assembly in here. That actually pushes down on a slider on the bottom here. And this whole mechanism here slides backwards. So what happens is as we push the pedal down, this slides back, and the elastomer is actually this little bit in here, which is pushing up against the load cell on the back here. So as we push it down, I'm probably not going to be able to do that very well there, but you can actually see in there, the pressure for the initial bite is coming from our spring up here, and then the elastomer underneath here, underneath this little metal shroud where we connect to our load cell. So interesting design there. I mean, it's not overly complex or anything like that. It certainly seems to get the job done. The only concern I guess I would have is, you know, this whole assembly is sliding along what looks to be a plastic kind of slide bearing here. So these don't appear to be Teflon or anything like that. So we may see some wear and tear there over time. Again, that's something that we'll just have to comment on as we run into it. We will try to put as much usage into these as we possibly can. But yeah, look, I mean, overall, they're a very nice design. I love how they've got this anodized finish, but with the machining, so you see the raw aluminium underneath. It just kind of has that nice race car premium look to it without being kind of over the top and unnecessary. I'm not a huge fan of the pinstriping here, but again, that's just a subjective thing. But look, mounting holes are nice and wide. Shouldn't have any problems at all mounting this onto profile. Didn't come included with any sort of heel rest or anything like that. So obviously we do need to factor that into the price too. Not 100% clear at this point how the pricing works with regards to whether you get that heel rest or not for the $549 that we mentioned. Again, that's something that I'll clarify before we do our full review. But yeah, look, at face value, they look to be pretty darn cool. The material, the construction, everything like that, I don't have any alarm bells going off whatsoever. The connections are maybe a little bit on the flimsy side, but again, once you're all plugged in and you're ready to go, you know, you're not going to be moving those kinds of things around anyway, so I don't really see that being a problem. But look, in terms of adjustability and all those sorts of things, it appears to have everything we need. I mean, obviously we'll explore all the springs and everything once we get up and driving later on too. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up for now in terms of an unboxing and first impressions. Gotta say, overall, I'm pretty impressed. So there you have it, guys. That's a quick unboxing and overview of the MOZA Sim Racing ecosystem. Look, I've got to say, at least at face value, I'm quite impressed with what I see so far. Obviously, we did have very high expectations for this product based off the price point alone. And obviously, we're yet to see whether it lives up to that expectation in terms of the driving experience. We are expecting it to be at least on par with the Fanatec V3 pedals with the performance kit, And of course a DD1 in terms of the wheelbase. Obviously get to look at the software implementation and all those little bits and pieces which are obviously vitally important to the final overall experience. So I definitely wouldn't be basing any purchasing decisions off this video alone. There are a lot of other content creators as well which I know are getting their hands on these products, so it'll be a good idea to check out what all the reviews have to say and then make your own conclusions from that. But yeah, thank you very much to MOZA for sending this over for us to check out. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it in more detail. Obviously there were a couple of questions that popped up throughout the unboxing experience too. Not exactly sure what the throttle motor is all about, so we'll try and clarify that. Not sure what the deal was with the paddle here as well. That was very strange and seemed to be completely unnecessary, but yeah, we'll get some clarification on that as well. I'm sure there's a good explanation. So we hope that you guys have enjoyed this unboxing and overview. Obviously you can look forward to the full and detailed review coming up soon as well. I think what we'll do in terms of those videos is probably review the wheelbase, the dash and the wheel all as one review together, and then maybe review the pedals separately and bring all of our thoughts together about the ecosystem as a whole, because I think that is a big part of the story here and definitely something that shouldn't be, you know, I guess understated, is the fact that, you know, this is a brand new brand that is bringing a complete ecosystem to the table, which is, you know, quite impressive, I think. And, you know, obviously they've put a lot of time and effort into the design. We can see some design elements that do look like they've been brought across from other brands. Obviously we've got the quick release, which is pretty much identical to what we have on SimMagic, as well as the shifters that we noticed on the wheel. The cages there and the design seem to be pretty much identical to what we had on SimMagic as well. So I don't know whether there's some factory sharing going on there. That's another thing that I'll try and get some clarification on as well for you guys before we do the full review, but we're going to leave it at that for today. So leave a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the video. Make sure you're subbed as well so you don't miss the full review coming as soon as we possibly can. And yeah guys, we'll see you again soon. Bye.